Welcome back to Pop Dissected. Today, we're going to be talking about Lady Gaga's scrapped album, Artpop Act 2. Though this album may never see the light of day, a recent surge of interest has begun surrounding this scrapped album. Even if the album isn't entirely forgotten, slipping into the backs of our minds before being teased again, what could have this successor to Artpop have been? Why was this album scrapped, and what was the true reasoning Gaga had when she initially wanted to release Artpop in 2 separate volumes? Well, let's get right into it, and dive into the development of Artpop and Artpop Act 2, and try to decipher some potential reasonings we have yet to see this album. But before we begin, it would be greatly appreciated if you gave this video a thumbs up and considered subscribing, so you can get more future content on all your favorite pop stars. The development for Artpop as we know it began shortly after the release of Lady Gaga's second studio album, Born This Way. Recording sessions for the album began alongside Gaga embarking on the Born This Way Ball tour, which began in April of 2012. Though a reported 50 songs were all in development during this time, some estimate it's truly around 90. Gaga has stated her concept for Artpop was to push herself in ways that she hasn't approached before. With the immense success and awe delivered by Born This Way, one may wonder how Gaga would be able to pull this off. With Artpop, Gaga was veering away from having an album that had one overarching message, and wanted to focus on her own personal journey of sorts. Having prefaced Artpop with mottos of self-love and empowerment, Gaga cemented that message and identity would always prevail with her music, and who she was, which in turn allowed her to be more experimental with Artpop. Gaga continued on how Artpop would lack a sense of maturity found on Born This Way, which doesn't necessarily mean that the art or the music, or even the approach, wasn't being taken seriously. But as stated with the particular messaging, we could gather that Artpop could showcase a more playful Lady Gaga, wrapped up in a landscape of self-referential music that dares to be more abject than personal. With the title revealed in October of 2012 via an Instagram post, it would only be a few more months before the album would finally drop. But following her injured hip that led to the cancellation of the Born This Way ball, Artpop's early release of 2013 would be delayed. Additionally, in October of 2012, Gaga would explain how the album was more modern in its stylings, expressing how the more experimental tracks would be released as one volume, and more radio-friendly hits on another. This idea, though compelling, may show one insight into why we didn't get that second volume of Artpop. Now, this may boil down to personal taste, so let me do my best to explain this well. If Artpop largely centers around the idea of Lady Gaga blending art, the artist, and music, all into one, in hopes of creating an album that would challenge her own skills, how does separating the album into 2 volumes exemplify this? By Gaga separating the more radio-friendly tracks and the experimental tracks onto 2 separate efforts, isn't that going against the entire idea of what she wanted to set out to do? I would say so, because we'd be ending up essentially with 2 different volumes that, even if they were paired together, would not make an entirely cohesive body of work. But could that be an effective approach? A second volume may be more effective if it was a continuation of the first, not so much a separate effort that doesn't complement the first. Artpop Act 2 would not be mentioned until about a month before the official release of Artpop, in October of 2013. Gaga stated how she had a large collection of songs for Act 2, and in November, she went on to explain how she'd be playing both acts on tour. Additionally, which seems to tie in my aforementioned point, Gaga decided against having Artpop be in 2 halves, because she wasn't sure at the time what the concept of Artpop truly meant to her. This, I think, was a smart move, as it was potentially a much stronger idea for Gaga to put out this first act of the album that has a more centralized vision, instead of dividing it up from the get-go. In March of 2014, Act 2 was brought up again, with Gaga now saying Artpop may have more than 2 acts, with the second being completed but not ready to be released yet. The following month, Gaga didn't really give any more insight into this Act 2, other than that it exists and it was going to release very soon. And this is where the trail went cold for nearly 4 years, with the infamous Act 2 of Artpop seemingly fading from everyone's minds. In November of 2018, DJ Shadow White, who served as a producer on Born This Way and Artpop, stated that #LG6, which later would become Chromatica, was like a little sister to Artpop. which in some people's minds meant that this would be Artpop Act 2. Also, he went into brief detail on the struggles Lady Gaga endured during this era, such as the loss of her support team. On April Fools of this year, DJ Shadow White posted that an alleged Artpop Act 2 track, T, would be released. Fans responded in the masses, creating a petition for Act 2 to be released, prompting both a response from DJ Shadow White and even Lady Gaga herself. Little Monsters, aside from just generally wanting Act 2, highlight their appreciation for Gaga's more experimental work, and don't mind about how this album would do on the charts. After trending #BuyArtPop on iTunes and the album reaching #1 on a variety of global charts, Gaga explained how much pain and struggle she went through during this era, and how she appreciated her Little Monsters' love for the album. And the final recent development we've gotten has DJ Shadow White revealing a scheduled meeting he set up with Gaga to discuss possible future developments for Act 2. So what could be some reasonings for Artpop Act 2 never seeing the light of day? Well, I have a few theories in mind. The first already being mentioned on how two separate entities wouldn't necessarily best reflect the initial intended concept for the album. But before we continue, I'd love for you to join my community of channel members, where you can receive special perks, exclusive badges, emojis, early access to videos, and my Pop Dissected podcast. I hope to see you join. The Artpop era is dubbed as Lady Gaga's unofficial, or official, depending how you look on it, flop era. Some stated that this is in comparison to Gaga's previous efforts only, such as Born This Way. Some say she didn't meet the mark of other high-profile releases around the same time of hers. A few saw Artpop as a half-finished, pretentious dumpster fire. The album sold well, and the tour was nearly sold out, but this was in an era of everyone against Gaga, and she even addressed this herself. She struggled immensely in private as she dealt with her hip issues prior to Artpop's release. She was even furthermore pitted up against Madonna, and now Katy Perry, and then was getting slammed for collaborating with R. Kelly. She also split with her longtime manager Troy Carter after this era, and apparently stopped visiting the fan site Gaga Daily due to overwhelming negativity from her fans. Though looking back fondly in recent days, it's clear a lot went on during this era that was overwhelmingly negative for Lady Gaga. Could it be as simple as the negativity encouraged Gaga to forget Act 2 for the time being? Perhaps. We know that Gaga was set on challenging herself artistically when it came to Artpop. Upon its release, a lot of people had a lot of negative things to say. While there are further details in my "Was Artpop Really a Flop" video, one could assume the reception, petty drama, and intended vision not connecting with main audiences made Gaga not see a point in releasing an Act 2 at all. If there was so much rebuttal and controversy from just one effort, what would two of them have brought on for Gaga? We can't be sure. Is there a future for Artpop? If we got a second volume of Artpop, what other bonuses do you think Lady Gaga would include? Lastly, do you think the push for Artpop Act 2 is necessary, or will the hype once more die down again if nothing comes from the official petition? As for myself, I'd be interested to see what else can be procured from another installment of this era. Not having been close to the era upon its original release, I'm definitely curious to see how Gaga could expand upon this wonderfully, truly original world. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I'd like to shout out my Hotshot debut and Pop Icon Status channel members: Veli Oskay, Carl Dillinson, Matthew Quigley, Gerard Lang, Daniel Barron, Jalen Heater, Tyler Salvetti, Nicole Sherman, Crystalline Gregory, Skyhawker, and Steven. Thank you all so much for your support. It is greatly appreciated. I would love to see others join my channel membership. And once more, I would appreciate it so much if you gave this video a thumbs up and considered subscribing so you can get more future content on all your favorite pop stars.